Now, this is a story from a long time ago when I was only 3 years old, and you may think that I don't remember anything, but that's not true in my case. I know people most of the time can't remember before the age of 5 years old, but I'm one of the few people that actually do have memories of my infancy. I do not claim to have a perfect memory or anything like that, but I do have a longer memory than most people would think I do. This incident happened when I was 3 years old, and I had a major accident that left me unable to walk after leaving the hospital for quite some time. I had to use a little red wagon as a sort of wheelchair, since I was too small for an actual wheelchair and I was a bit too heavy for my parents to be carrying around all day long. Also, slightly relevant to the story is how my mother enjoyed dressing me even though I couldn't walk. She preferred to have me wear floral dressy dresses with lace and frills and big bows in my hair. I looked basically like a porcelain doll, and when I was still, I actually did look quite like one. Even I have to admit that. With that, let's get started on the story for the cast we have. It was the beginning of summer, and my family generally has this one park that we would always go to for family gatherings and reunions and such. While my cousins and sister were out running around and playing, I had to stay by my parents in my little red wagon, unable to go and run with them. It broke my mom's heart to see me that way, yearning to just go run and play, but if I moved too much, I would be in severe pain. Suddenly, my sister gets hurt. I think she scraped her knee or something, but I'm not quite sure. This caused my mother to leave my side, and I was left alone for a few minutes, but still within my parents' line of sight. I didn't mind being alone for a little while, as it gave me time to think, and I was busy doodling with a piece of paper and pencil that my father had given me so I could draw and keep myself occupied. While I was alone, I didn't notice a tall woman and her little boy, who is 3 times my age and twice my size, spot me and my little red wagon. The little boy seemed to like my wagon and was gently tugging on his mother's skirt to get her attention. "Mommy, I want that wagon. I want to ride in it like she is." The mother looked down to her little boy and gave him a reassuring smile. "All right, I'll get you the wagon. Just come with me." The woman and little boy came close to me, and the mother kneeled down so she could be at my eye level so she could talk to me. Entitled, "Mother, hello, little girl. That is a very pretty dress you have on." She started off nice enough, but that would change soon. "Can my little boy have a ride in the wagon now? I think you've been in it long enough." I looked at the woman completely confused and scared and shook my head, telling her, "No, it's my wagon." I looked over to my father or mother, who is still a little bit busy with the other kids, that they didn't quite notice that this woman was bothering me yet. I looked back to the woman and she looked very angry and upset with me. Entitled, "Mother, you sat there long enough. It's time for someone else to have a turn. Just because you're dressed like a princess doesn't mean you are one. Don't be a brat and let my son have a ride in the wagon." I shook my head again and tried to hold on to my wagon, but the woman pried my fingers off the rims of the red wagon quite roughly, especially for a tiny girl who was still injured and recovering. She then proceeded to pick me up quite quickly, causing me to scream in pain before she put me down on the sidewalk without even a hint of gentility, and plopped me down on the hard cement, which really hurt my still healing hips, which were the reason I couldn't walk nor leave my wagon. I guess the woman just thought I was throwing a tantrum, but no, I was in severe pain, and when she dropped me on the hard cement, it was excruciating. The woman put her son on the wagon instead and started to pull on him, taking him for a ride, ignoring me and my crying, but my screams had alerted my mother and my father to what was going on, and they both hurried over and screamed at the woman. "What are you doing?" my mother screams. "Get your hands off my daughter and off her wagon right now." My father didn't say a word and just ran over to me to make sure that I was okay, which I was not. He was very gentle and careful as he lifted me up into his arms, trying to soothe my aching body and to stop my crying. My mother was completely irate. If there was one thing you never did with my parents around, it was to harm their children, and this woman, granted slightly, unknowingly, hurt me badly. "What's wrong? She's just being a brat and throwing a tantrum. She'll be fine," said entitled mother. "My son just wanted a ride. It's fine." "No, That is my daughter's medical equipment. She's too small for a wheelchair. That is the closest thing we have. How dare you do that to a little girl? She's 3 years old. She's only got out of the hospital a month ago after a severe car accident. She can't walk, and that's what we use to pull her around when we're outside. You're overreacting. She's fine. She's just throwing a tantrum. No, she is not. I have the medical bills to prove it. You will get your child out of my daughter's wagon now, and you will leave or I will call the cops. Entitled, Kid, Mom, you're not going to give my new wagon back, are you? I like it. Let's go. You're extremely rude. If my son wants this wagon, he can have this wagon. Your daughter can just be carried around like everybody else. She can walk. She's just faking it. This angered my mother to no end. I swear she was about to hit this woman square in the jaw with no hesitation and no regrets. Thankfully, my father, who was surprisingly quiet throughout all this, finally showed exactly how scary he could be. His voice was low as he held me in his arms and looked down at her. He's about 6 feet tall. Papa Bear, if you don't get out of here right now and leave my daughter's wagon and everything in it, I will not hesitate to have you landed in jail for child endangerment, child abuse, theft, and assault. Do you hear me? The big words I was informed of later, as you know. Little kids don't know law. Speak. Unfortunately, this woman just didn't seem to want to give up and surrender my wagon. She started screaming that he was threatening her and he was attacking her. This caught the ear of a passing patrolling police officer. He came over and tried to assess the situation. Entitled, Mother, how dare you? Help, police, she screeched. Police officer, what's going on here? What seems to be the problem? These people are trying to steal my son's wagon. This woman stole our daughter's wagon that's necessary for her to get around. My daughter's pelvis is broken, and she can't walk. The police officer was confused and very concerned. He looked at me and saw that I was crying and in visibly a great amount of pain, but he had to be fair and have evidence to determine the outcome. Can either of you show me proof that this is your daughter's wagon and that this is, in fact, medical equipment? Luckily, my father and mother were both picture fanatics, Polaroids. So, thankfully, they had pictures of just about everything. My mother pulled out pictures of me in the hospital only a month prior. He could see that I was exactly the same as when I was in the picture. My father even pulled out a picture of me in the little red wagon coming out of the hospital. I had bandages, and my father even pulled out my medical record to show that it was in fact medical equipment, as some stores wouldn't allow wagons inside and could provide proof it was indeed necessary. He had them in the big bag that we kept for travel, in case of emergencies and if something went wrong and we had to go to the hospital again. Even my own sister wasn't allowed on my wagon, and she was only a year older than me. The officer recognized this as evidence and then looked at this woman with quite a bit of scorn and told her that if she didn't get her son off of the wagon, she would face some very serious repercussions. The woman kept insisting that it was her son's wagon when it was clearly mine. She first hollered and screamed as much as I dare to remember. She didn't stop until she had shiny silver bracelets wrapped around her wrists and her son started bawling and crying at this point. I eventually got my wagon back, but my mother was so worried about me that she did not put me down for the rest of the day until it was time for me to go to bed. I know you guys might think that this couldn't have happened, but it really did. The year was 1993. The location was a park in North Carolina that has a giant metal wagon wheel that people can climb if they want. For a little backstory, my family is really into Halloween and always had been. And I had the idea in 2019 to build a haunted house in our backyard, and it went well, and this year we decided to build it again bigger and better, but 2020 couldn't run because of COVID, and it's free to enter. We take donations at the front for a charity of choice each year and donate half the proceeds. My family and I, 21-year-old, put our own money into the construction, and it took a month, so very hard work and a decent amount of money. I love making others happy and helping out the community I live in, and that's the main reason we do it. We most definitely don't make a profit of this. This year's charity is for my neighbor's kids that have autism and epilepsy. Now onto the story. Saturday was the big day over the weekend, and my team of actors and I were so excited, and we had a very successful night. Over 500 people entered and $460 raised. Big increase from 200 people in the first year, but as the night was ending, a mom and her 2 kids came to the front, and this is how she started the conversation with my girlfriend at the entrance. Entitled, "Parent, are you guys seriously charging for this? I have 2 little kids. They should be free." Girlfriend, "No, ma'am. It's free as the sign says, but we are taking donations for a local neighbor's charity." "Okay. But what is this charity and who is it for?" My girlfriend explains charity and shows a handout on it for the little boy. The entitled parent, "Why do they need the money? There are people who can't afford basic needs like food and water. I live paycheck to paycheck, and this money would benefit my family more than this boy. You could give the money to my family and be happy, knowing you helped a family, and anyways, the money you raise probably won't be that significant in helping the boy. I'm sorry you feel this way. I'm sorry about your situation, but this boy suffers from over 50 seizures a day, and this money will go towards his medication and treatment. But enjoy the haunted house." The entitled parent got in line and was rolling her eyes and huffing and puffing. Girlfriend told me on radio as she was in line, and I chased her out of the haunted house, down the path with chainsaw. Her kids really loved the haunted house, though. I am a building manager, and I took over 2 residential apartment blocks. Part of my duties include assigning parking spots. Due to the incompetence and neglect of the previous management company, I inherited a parking lot, which was a complete organizational disaster, multiple tenants believing they had been assigned the same spot, tenants parking in spots but not paying, etc. And of course, the parking map, which is supposed to be regularly updated, had not seen an update in almost 16 months. A situation arose where 2 tenants were fighting over the same parking spot. Instead of coming to management to resolve, they engaged in a nasty gram war, which consisted of them leaving mean notes on each other's car. Eventually, this dispute spilled over, and I was contacted by one of them. The conversation was simple but plain. I expressed understanding about their frustration and asked specific questions to help figure out who was originally assigned that parking spot. I explained how previous management failed to maintain order in the parking map and that I would cheerfully resolve the issue. Instead of replying to my simple questions, "When were you assigned the spot? When did you sign your lease?" they sent me an all-caps email, which, in part, read, "I do not have to answer any questions, and I expect this parking situation to be resolved immediately with no more emails or text messages." Well, if they had just answered my questions, I could have resolved the situation. I suspected they were the original tenant assigned the spot, and it was indeed theirs. But since they would not answer questions and insisted on resolution immediately, I did what I could. I assigned the other tenant that spot, and I replied in order to resolve the issue without communication, "You are now assigned spot number 64. If you continue to park in spot 35, you will be towed immediately as it is now assigned to a different tenant." I gave them the spot right next to the dumpsters. Now they can enjoy the stench of rotting garbage and a cloud of wasps every trip to the car, which is also 100 meters further away from the doors. 2 days later, they approached me in person and apologized for their behavior. I said no worries. I don't hold grudges. They asked if I could reassign them their old spot. Nope.